Welcome to Think About It. I'm Sylvia Henderson, your host, and I invite you to tune in, take what you see and hear, and, well, think about it. So today, I am talking to two wonderful guests about a great organization and even more about that organization's focus, at least for this program. And that organization is Toastmasters. And I have two Toastmasters leaders here with me. We're not only just talking about Toastmasters, we're talking about veterans, not vets, not animal vets, but veterans, people who have served our country and how Toastmasters serves them. So my guests are Bernadette Garrett, wave hi, and Bonnie Maidak.
Hello, everyone.
So welcome to Think About It.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Sylvia.
So for the audience to know, full disclosure, I am also a Toastmasters member, so that makes me excited about the organization because I know what happens in it and know the value of it, but I'm going to have them tell you. So just let's start off right off the bat. Bernadette, what's your background? What led you to a Toastmasters? And I'll ask you more later.
I am a 27-year Air Force veteran, and I was first introduced to Toastmasters by a senior NCO that just drugged me to a Toastmasters meeting. And from there, I have not left the Toastmasters program. I felt that I was getting so many benefits from it, not only from a networking standpoint, getting to know other people that were not in the military and how they presented themselves, but it also helped me in my own articulation of speech when I had to brief or do a presentation for work. So that was my first introduction to Toastmasters, and as I transitioned out and retired about 5 years ago, it has helped me notice the things that I needed to work on, especially when it came to leadership and also how I presented myself. I was fine in the military, but when it came to interacting with the private sector, whether it's in an interview or when I wanted someone to consider my business, to make sure that I did not say the wrong thing or the things that I said, I could see a voice or how I said it.
Wow.
Because one thing I realized is my tone. I can come off a little seemingly gruff. It didn't bother me while I was in the military, but it was off-putting to some persons when they were giving an interview and asking me questions. And Toastmasters has helped me recognize that through the evaluations we get after we do our project presentations and when we go through that exercise of impromptu speaking called Table Topics.
Oh, we're going to talk about that. So you already notice, I'm sure, as viewers, to say articulation of speech. That comes from Toastmasters. Bonnie, what brought you to Toastmasters?
Well, it's funny, we just brought up table topics because that is what caused me to join Toastmasters, although I did not know that it was called that at the time. But I was not good at thinking on my feet. I would think 20 or 30 minutes later what I should have said.
You didn't have that script writer write that.
Exactly.
That script.
And I had a lot of, I want to say self-recrimination. I'm not sure if that is the best word, but it really caused me to have low self-esteem. And through Toastmasters, I've become very good, I think. I have some bad days sometimes, but when I'm on, I have a good day on speaking impromptu. So I've been a member now for more than 20 years. I've been very active in the local Maryland area. I've been in Maryland now about 20 years. I was a Toastmaster before that. And as I said, I initially joined because I was not very good. I didn't have the fear, which is why many people come to Toastmasters. They know that they have a presentation to do at work, but they are so scared and they cannot get past that. So it is a very helpful process to work through that. I didn't have the fear, but I knew I wasn't very good at speaking. And one of my biggest things that I've developed is I am from a scientific background, and we would have these monotone presentations that had no emphasis, no humor. no excitement, and yet you're saying, I am passionate about the research I'm doing. No, if you cannot do that and say, I am passionate about the research I'm doing, why would anyone want to listen to you?
So we're talking about Toastmasters, and I can imagine viewers who've never heard of it are thinking, so what,
We
they use a
give
toaster
toasts?
or they give
Yeah,
toast?
right.
So what is Toastmasters? And either one of you can answer that.
I'll go ahead. Toastmasters started in 1924. The person who started it is named Ralph Smedley. And it was initially for men, leadership organization. He started it through the YMCA in California. But it has helped now more than 4 million, 5 million people since 1924. Women were officially recognized as members in 1973, which was a little late. But it was also because of people in this area who sponsored the efforts to get the international organization to accept women. So I'm very proud of our local history about that. One of the board members at the time was a leader in this area and worked for the federal government. And he was one of my mentors, so I have a very special place in my heart for him. You go to a club meeting, you participate, you can give a prepared speech ahead of time that you know that you're going to speak. Usually our speeches are 5 to 7 minutes. There is the part of the meeting called Table Topics where someone identifies some questions and then the people answer for 1 to 2 minutes. And then we have another part of the meeting called Evaluations. So the prepared speakers receive some feedback on how they met the project objectives that they're trying to work on for that evening. There's another few other things that happen in a typical club meeting. It depends on the club, whether it's an hour meeting at noon at a work environment or a community club that meets in the evening, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours. Maybe a weekend club. Bernadette's a member of a weekend club. I'm a member of 5 clubs right now. And I have a mix of club meetings, twice a month, once a month, etc.
So are there special clubs, like we're talking about Toastmasters and a focus on veterans, are there special clubs for, I don't know, other careers or other, I don't know what I call it, I guess careers?
I can take this one too.
Okay, we're going to talk about veterans.
Yeah, we will. We will, and I'll get to that one. One of my clubs, I'm just giving a quick think through in my 5 clubs. But one of the things I want to share today with your viewers is a storytelling club that we did some workshops in this last couple of weeks about. And they are specifically working on telling stories. That's a form of public speaking, and yet we don't think about how to actually craft that story. And it was very important because, and again, it gets to your show's premise about helping people with their businesses. Think about telling the story about your business. I know Bernadette has a business, and so she needs to identify that pitch. So she needs to tell people, who am I? What do I have? Or what am I as far as my business is concerned? And why should you care? You as the client, okay, I'm the business owner, I'm trying to sell you my service or my tool, and yet if you cannot articulate that,
That's right.
you're not going to get product sales, you're not going to get your clients. And you can focus, therefore, on working on that storytelling skill.
And I also know, just because I've been in them, other kinds of clubs. I don't know if I call them special, but I know there have been corporate clubs for those
Yes,
who don't
definitely.
run their own businesses. I started working for a company, and the company had a club within it.
Right.
Many of them do, I know, to help employees be better at speaking and leadership.
And I'll just share that in District 36, which is where I'm a representative in the Washington, D.C. area, we have 3 Toastmaster districts. District 36 covers Montgomery County, the northern half of Prince George's County, and then the northeast and northwest quadrants of Washington, D.C., we have about 200 clubs. And about 30% of them, 30 to 40%, are corporate clubs, 30 to 40% are government clubs, and then 30 to 40% are community clubs. And government, I'm counting county or federal government, any type of government.
That I
right?
didn't know. Okay.
This is information I need for my role as the club growth director, so I have those statistics now.
Well, good, yeah.
And in addition to all of that diversity, you have clubs that have different languages. You have
Definitely.
clubs that speak Spanish, clubs that speak French, Chinese. And on the professional side, there is a club that's called PMI, the Project Management Institute
That's another one.
of Montgomery County. That's a professional, well, that's a club. It's a community club that's geared towards
Focus on
PMI.
an industry, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you have
okay.
your PMP, your project management,
I don't know,
Professional.
certification.
Professional,
whatever.
yes.
right? So you can get continuing education credits by participating in that club. And I know
Okay.
that the PMI Montgomery County Club, but there's also some other PMI clubs around the country.
Okay, and so the focus of Toastmasters as a whole is some people only know it as speaking, but it's also leadership.
Definitely leadership.
How about maybe one thing before we break, believe it or not, for a quick break, one thing that Toastmasters has done for you specifically as a veteran who has entered into the private industry.
Private sector.
Yeah, the private sector. Thank you. I wasn't sure of the term.
In Toastmasters, as far as leadership is concerned, of course, in the military, we consider ourselves a leader. And you direct people and you manage people all day long. But what Toastmasters has done for me from a leadership aspect is it's helped me hone other interpersonal skills that I need. Toastmasters is all volunteer. And I have to develop other leadership skills in order to effectively inspire, persuade other members to help facilitate the educational program. And that's not always easy. So it's helped me hone those skills and still helping me hone those skills. It's a challenge, but it's one of the things that one of the benefits I've really received from Toastmasters thus far.
Now, you said educational program. Real quickly before we break, so what, there's a structure?
Yes.
Now, don't go through the whole meeting, but there's a structure?
So the current educational program is called Pathways Learning Experience. This came out about 2 years ago, and it is online work that we do. So much of our professional work training is online. You still give a speech in a club meeting, but you can do a lot more reading and looking at tutorials, videos to help you develop those skills. I think the benefit of the Pathways educational system is its modularity, its flexibility. Even since it first was released, we still now have a new path called Engaging Humor. So I'm very excited about it.
Okay. So when we come back, let's dig more into the issues of someone who is getting out of the service or coming into the private sector, and some of the leadership and communication skills they need that they get from Toastmasters.
Sure.
Okay, so with that, we'll be right back.
All right, Monroe, you ready? Monroe! Ooh.
Hello, welcome back to Think About It. I'm Sylvia Henderson, still your host, and we're still talking about Toastmasters and more specifically how that organization can serve veterans, especially those who are coming out of their military service into the civilian workforce and population. My guests are still Bernadette Garrett and Bonnie Maidak. And so I'm going to focus more on you, Bernadette, this half, because you are a veteran and you have come out into the civilian workforce. So what are some of the challenges, I'm going to say unique to veterans coming into the civilian world, whether it's workforce, whether it's starting a business, You know, we're a different kind of folk than the military folk.
This is true. And when it comes to communication, we have to work on making sure that our message is coming across clearly, because we're so used to acronyms.
Barking orders.
Absolutely. And again, I mentioned tone on how the tone of how we speak, that it can be off-putting to some, especially when you're trying to go through an interview. I remember one interview that I went through, and it asked me a question regarding how I respond to a situation, and I proceeded to answer the question. And because I have a technical background, I mentioned the word commo, and that's communication, equipment, but they don't know that.
Okay.
And I got this deer in the headlights look from one of the interviewers, and I had to course correct myself. But that was a challenge that I had to begin to work on, making sure that my speech was, well, the language that I had in the military, whether it's acronyms or jargon, that I had to move away from that. And that's a challenge for some, but through Toastmasters, I began to practice that, because even through a table topic session or a presentation, I would get an evaluation asking me, well, if you could have explained that a little bit better, what's this, what's that, what is BLUF, bluff, bottom line up front, and things of that nature. So that was one of the challenges when it came to, as far as transitioning and coming into the private sector. And when it came to explaining what I did, because they ask you, what's your background, and translating it into terms that the interviewer can understand. And that's the big roadblock we as veterans sometimes face, is making sure that we're understood and not misunderstood by the private sector when it comes to our skills, our talents, being able to articulate that in a form that they can understand and embrace, because sometimes they think we're either not qualified enough for the position or overqualified for the position.
So leadership, because again, communication, leadership, I'm imagining that even leadership style in military is different from what you need to project and how you need to gain followers in the civilian workforce. I mean, I encountered challenges. I work for, let's say, a major Fortune 50 company that has little striped letters. And they used to be accused of being military-like. And so I had to learn, and we had uniforms, and we wore blue suits, white shirts, and all that stuff. I had to learn to adjust my leadership style, just coming from corporate, to work with more feeling kinds of people in future jobs. What have you learned in leadership style?
Well, one of the benefits being in the military is you work with a lot of diverse people. So you have those interactions. But the thing that I had to work on when it came to leading in a volunteer organization, for instance, is my leadership style. In the military, as I mentioned earlier, I direct, can command if necessary for something to be done. But in a volunteer organization, we have to learn other interpersonal skills, and not just with our voice, but with our body language as well. Again, tone, making sure that we are putting the right tone forth. And because you have a different climate and meaning environment, a different culture, you just have to become more loose, more engaging, to some degree.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's not always easy.
And I think even just becoming more aware of the other person with whom you're communicating. And I don't know if everyone always picks up that that awareness, and putting yourself in their shoes to understand why they're having trouble understanding your message.
I think you can put that to communication 101, making sure that the message you sent is the one that was received. Yes. And we're taught that in the military, but there's those nuances like the jargon as well as the tone and the making sure that you're looking at it more situational instead of more direct.
And I know, I would imagine, I know we practice, there's that structure, and the structure, you serve certain roles in the club, and so that gives you leadership experience. But I'm also thinking the emotional intelligence. I mean, especially in this day and age when we've been raised to, not to pick on younger people, but for those who have been born and raised with machines in their hands, to catch the body language, the physical responses, the eye connections. You need to work on that.
Yeah.
And just like any other different culture, you have to learn to be able to make that adjustment. And again, it's like Bonnie said, being aware. And I like the term that you use, and it's something that I always like to execute is emotional intelligence, because that's what builds an effective team. And you get a little bit more of that in a volunteer organization. Again, through Toastmasters, I've been able to work with club officers and district leaders and understanding, number one, their positions and their personalities, because it's one of those things that takes time to gain that, to increase that emotional intelligence quotient, I would say.
I want to say too, though, that, not the though there, for this particular club and for all clubs, Toastmasters is that environment where you can fail and make mistakes and you can try things. So
It's
for
a
the
safe
it's a
environment.
safe environment. It's a supportive environment. And so for the vets who are leaving the military service, they can come and establish a new community within their Toastmasters club.
That they feel comfortable with. We had a Toastmasters article from a wounded warrior in Australia who shared his story of how he overcame PTSD by going to Toastmasters. I think, if I remember the article correctly, his co-worker came to him, noticed that he would not speak on the phone. He would hardly speak at all.
Okay.
And that's what made him decide to join Toastmasters, and it has helped him overcome that. And that's one of the benefits, I think, that it could be for the veteran community. Number one, to become more comfortable and have a tool and a forum, a supportive environment for them to practice that transition when it comes to communication.
So your club, this club is going to be specifically for veterans.
For the
That's a
veteran
question.
community.
For the veteran
For
community.
their caregivers, as well as active duty military, their military spouses.
Okay.
Because there's a whole community that has to work with transitions constantly, not only with their moving, but it helps. It helps to have an environment that knows what their struggles are, and they understand each other's language, but understand that there's another way to, there's an actual group that will be able to help them improve in those areas where they may be lacking.
So if I, who has no military background, but believes in supporting the military, wanted to join the club, would I feel comfortable?
I would think you would.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think mostly it's the fact that you're wanting to support the military. It's up to each club to decide on their own charter as far as their pool of membership. Some corporate clubs are closed. You have to be an employee of that corporate club.
Okay.
But for this club, we really want the veterans to be supported. And I think if you are a friend of the military, then it depends on the club. But I think that you would be welcome.
Absolutely.
So if you knew then what you know now, and you can kind of put that any way you want, what's one thing that you would tell a viewer about something they need to do to step outside their comfort zone, or something to make it easier for them to come to Toastmasters? I don't know, fill in the blank. If I knew then what I knew now,
I would tell them to just do it. Why not? Why not? We are put in situations in the military every day on command. More dangerous than sitting in a room, trying to practice public speaking, even though public speaking is one of the number one or two fears of many individuals. But when it comes to stepping out of their comfort zone, this is one of the things that they can look at and see that there's more than just the military, my past. It's more, this can lead me to another direction in my future that I never could have imagined.
Cool. One thing from each of you, you want the viewers to remember after they've watched the show. What's that one thing you want them to remember?
I would say Toastmasters can change your life. And it has for me. I can talk a very long time, which I'm not going to, because I know we're at the end of the show, but I have gotten so much out of Toastmasters. People who continue to learn, and I do every meeting. That's why I'm a 20-year member of Toastmasters.
Yeah.
Take the leap.
All right.
And bottom line, take the leap. We have dreams, we have aspirations, and if you don't have an aspiration or vision, you'll find one. You never know, but you have to take that leap. You have to take that first step.
And I echo you in terms of always learning. I mean, I've been a Toastmaster member, it's got to be way over 20 years. I speak professionally. I get paid to speak on stage. I still love going to my club meetings twice a month because there's always something that they can help me tweak. There's always something that we can try out. Right. I'm about to compete in a contest, and so that's a different level of, that's another whole thing that people can find out about. And given that, how do they find out about your club and find out about Toastmasters?
The email address we would like to have people use is info@district36.org. That's info@district36.org.
Cool. And as we're coming to the close, maybe one. So Ralph Smedley. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you know if is there a quotation or something that he really wanted people to get from Toastmasters, or his whole purpose for forming it, other than to teach men to speak?
Right. So I am not that great at remembering quotes.
Okay.
However, the one quote I do remember of his is that we learn best in moments of enjoyment. And if you're not enjoying yourself, now it might take a little bit of time if you have a lot of fear about public speaking, but once you get over that fear, you will have then that ability to be confident at anything you do.
Awesome.
So it's important that you have that enjoyment.
Awesome. Bernadette, Bonnie, boy, I got 2 B's. Okay. Thank you so much for being on the show on Think About It.
Thank you.
And I
Thank you
wish
for
you the
having
best in Toastmasters.
Thank you.
Thank
I know our
you.
paths will cross as they do. So with that, I hope you enjoyed this program. I hope you consider learning about and joining a Toastmasters club, whether it's for veterans or whether it's for your organization or the general public. So go to the Toastmasters website and, just like Bernadette said, do it. I'm Sylvia Henderson, your host. I invite you to tune in, take what you see and hear, and, well, think about it.